This is the VOA Special English Health Report. A mother in Washington noticed something unusual one day just before her daughter's 8th birthday. She thought her daughter was developing breasts. When they went for the girl's yearly checkup, she asked the doctor if she was right. And the doctor said the girl had breast buds. Last year, a study in Denmark reported an increase in early breast development. Now, a new study in the journal Pediatrics adds to evidence of an increase in early puberty in American girls. The study took place in 3 big cities. Dr. Frank Bureau at Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center in Ohio led the study. He says it began about 7 years ago. Researchers studied a group of about 1,200 girls to see when they would begin puberty. Dr. Bureau says the study found that white girls had the greatest increase in rates of breast development. The rates, he says, were about twice as high for 7- and 8-year-olds compared to earlier studies. At age 7, the rates were 10% of whites, 23% of blacks, and 15% of Hispanics. Dr. Bureau says girls with a higher body mass index are more likely to enter puberty early. Body mass index, or BMI, is a measure of weight in relation to height. But the nation's increase in overweight children may be only part of the explanation. The researchers have been collecting blood and urine samples from the girls for testing. Dr. Bureau says the tests are to look for chemicals from the girls' environment that could affect growth. He says these chemicals might act like natural hormones that the body makes, or the chemicals might interfere with how those hormones act on the body. He says these chemicals could include growth hormones fed to farm animals, but they could also include chemicals such as phthalates. These are used to make some kinds of plastics and other products. Dr. Bureau says personal care products contain chemicals that could affect the timing of maturation or other body functions. But researchers must wait for all the girls to enter puberty before they can understand the effects of environmental chemicals. Dr. Bureau says less research has been done to look for early puberty in boys. But he says some studies have shown that a higher BMI does not speed up development in boys and may even slow it. And that's the VOA Special English Health Report.
This is the VOA Special English Health Report. Sometimes new health advice conflicts with old advice. Yet new guidelines for breast cancer testing in the United States created a storm of debate in November. The advice came from experts who are appointed by the government to develop guidelines for preventive services like mammograms. The experts advised most women to get fewer mammograms. They said the risk of needless treatment outweighs the good from more tests. The new advice is to get tested every 2 years instead of yearly, and to start at age 50 instead of 40. The task force must not consider medical costs. But critics accused the Obama administration of trying to limit mammograms to save money. The administration pointed out that the current members of the group were appointed during the last administration. And officials said the study had begun long before the latest debate on health reform. The House of Representatives passed health care legislation in November, and the Senate agreed to begin full debate on its own bill. The Secretary of Health and Human Services said the new advice would not affect government policies. Kathleen Sebelius advised women to keep doing what you have been doing. Some say they worry that health plans might pay for fewer mammograms now. But every state except Utah requires insurance companies to pay for testing women in their 40s. There appeared to be less reaction a few days later when a different group released new guidelines for cervical cancer testing. The American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists said the timing was just by chance. The new guidelines say women age 21 to 29 only need to get a Pap test every 2 years instead of yearly. Girls are advised to begin testing within 3 years of when they first have sex, or in any case, no later than 21. A Pap test looks for abnormal cervical cells that could become cancer. Doctors may remove suspicious growths, but the experts say that in most cases in young women, these growths would go away by themselves. Removing them can lead to problems such as scarring and the need for cesarean births later. Cervical cancer is highly curable if it is found early. Pap tests have saved countless lives. Today, most of the deaths are in countries with poor health care. And that's the VOA Special English Health Report. For more health news, go to voaspecialenglish.com.
This is the VOA Special English Health Report. We talked last week about ways to avoid cold weather injuries. Today, we are going to talk about emergency treatment of hypothermia. Hypothermia can be mild, moderate, or severe. Mild hypothermia is something that most people have experienced if they live in cold climates. You feel so cold that your body starts to shake. Not very much, but uncontrollably. The treatment for mild hypothermia starts with getting out of the cold and, if necessary, changing into dry clothes. Drinking warm, non-alcoholic liquids and eating something sugary can stop the shivering. Taking a warm bath or sitting by a fire or doing some exercise can also help the body warm up. These are all common sense treatments. But treatment changes when people enter the moderate or severe stages of hypothermia. In that situation, their body temperature drops below 35 degrees Celsius. They lose the ability to think clearly. Their muscles become stiff. They might bump into things or fall over objects. We got advice from a park ranger experienced in search and rescue for the National Park Service in California. Adrian Freeman explained that rescuers will first try to prevent additional heat loss. They will place extra covering around the chest, head, and neck of hypothermia victims to keep them warm. It is important to work fast to get people out of the cold. Hypothermia victims need medical help as soon as possible. But it is equally important to move them slowly and gently. Any rough or sudden movement can force cold blood from the arms, legs, and hands deep into the warmer middle of the body. The sudden flow of cold blood can create shock, a serious condition. It can also cause a dangerously abnormal heartbeat. The process of rewarming a person needs to be done slowly in a hospital setting. Ranger Freeman said members of search and rescue teams have a saying that victims are not dead until they are warm and dead. An extremely low body temperature can cause the heart to beat so slowly that a pulse may be difficult to find. In other words, a person who is suffering from the effects of severe cold may seem dead, but still be alive. And that's the VOA Special English Health Report. If you missed last week's advice about how to avoid cold weather injuries, you can find it at voaspecialenglish.com. And you can follow us on Twitter and YouTube at VOA Learning English.
This is the VOA Special English Health Report. Researchers say American children now eat an average of 3 snacks a day between meals. A study found that those snacks add up to almost 1/3 of all the daily calories eaten by children. And those extra calories could help explain the rise in overweight children in the United States. The study was done at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. The researchers studied the diets of 31,000 children ages 2 to 18 over a 30-year period. They found that snacking has increased since the 1970s. And what kinds of snacks have increased the most? Salty, high-fat foods like chips. The study also found greater snacking on cake, cookies, and other treats that past generations might have saved for after dinner. The study is in the journal Health Affairs. Nutrition professor Barry Popkin was the lead investigator. He says parents should limit snacks to 1 a day for children age 6 and older. He also advises parents and caregivers to provide healthy snacks like fruits and vegetables. Professor Popkin says American schools also need to improve their nutrition. For example, schools may have vending machines that offer what many people would consider junk food. There has been a push for schools to offer more healthful snacks and lunch choices and fewer sugary drinks. In March, Coca-Cola said it would stop selling sugary drinks in American schools unless parents requested them. Its competitors at Pepsi announced that they will stop sales of sugar drinks to schools worldwide. America's top public health officer wants to see more changes like this. Surgeon General Regina Benjamin recently spoke to lawmakers about making healthy foods more available. She says there is growing agreement that healthy choices should be easy and affordable. Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack, who has talked about his own childhood struggles with weight, agrees about the need. First Lady Michelle Obama is leading a campaign to fight childhood obesity. Public health officials reported in January that 17% of American children are severely overweight. And that's the VOA Special English Health Report. For more health news, visit us at our website, voaspecialenglish.com. You can also download our programs and comment on our stories.
This is the VOA Special English Health Report. A pacemaker is a small device that doctors place in people with an abnormal heartbeat. If a heart beats too slowly, the pacemaker will use electrical signals to help set a normal rate. Some devices include a defibrillator, which gives a shock if the heart beats too fast. Pacemakers may be permanent or temporary, but one thing is sure, developing countries need more of them as more people get heart disease. A big problem, however, is the cost. Buying and implanting a pacemaker costs from $5,000 to $15,000. But doctors at the University of Michigan think they know a way to lower that cost. The idea is to reuse pacemakers. Heart doctor Tamir Bauman estimates that more than 1 million people worldwide need pacemakers each year. He says reusing a pacemaker is an ethical way to provide health care to those who have no other way to get one. He got the idea a few years ago. One of his patients asked if someone might be given her pacemaker for reuse after she died. But are used pacemakers safe? Dr. Bauman studied medical reports about the safety of pacemakers that were being reused in small studies. He says, "We found that there's no real difference in device infection or device malfunction when you compare it to new pacemaker implantation." Funeral directors normally remove pacemakers when preparing bodies for cremation. Pacemakers can explode if they are burned. So Dr. Bauman asked funeral directors in Michigan to send the pacemakers to him. He and other researchers at the University of Michigan Medical Center tested the used pacemakers. They cleaned and disinfected the ones in good working order. Then they sent them to doctors in the Philippines, Vietnam, and Ghana. The doctors successfully implanted the used pacemakers in 12 patients. The findings were recently presented at a conference in Washington of the American Heart Association. Now, Tamir Bauman has asked the United States Food and Drug Administration for approval to do a larger test. He says, speaking by Skype from his office in Ann Arbor, Michigan, that he is hopeful the program will work. He hopes other centers in the United States and Europe can form their own programs and help countries in Africa and Asia that have no other access to these kinds of devices. And that's the VOA Special English Health Report.